it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. Night settled in now. That quiet stretch where everything feels a little too still, a little too close. You've made it here, and that means you're stepping past the edge of the ordinary with me. I'll be the one guiding you, but not somewhere safe. Not tonight. So go ahead, dim the lights, kill the noise. Get comfortable, if that's even possible. Because what's waiting isn't just one story, it's a handful of them. Different voices, different kinds of fear. The slow kind that crawls up your spine and the sudden kind that hits you before you can even breathe. Each one has its own way of getting to you. And they're all waiting their turn. So if you're willing to see what shape the dark takes tonight, let's not keep it waiting any longer. The Odd Disappearance of Daniel Barter by Swamp Dweller. To begin this story, we must return to 1959 in Perdido Bay, Alabama. The date was June 18th, 1959, and the Barter family, who lived in the 1700 block of Thrush Drive in the nearby city of Mobile, Alabama, were enjoying a camping trip in the Perdido Bay area. This trip consisted of Daniel Barter, his mother, 3 of his 6 siblings, and 1 of his cousins. His other 3 siblings were staying with some relatives. This campsite was not more than an hour from their home in Mobile. Sometime between 9:30 a.m. and 10 a.m., while Daniel's parents were preparing their fishing equipment for the day, Daniel would wander off from the rest of his family. At the time, he was carrying a bottle of Nehi soda. Maxine Barter, his mother, did not notice Daniel's absence until about 10 to 15 minutes later. She began searching for her son, but could not locate him or any sign of him anywhere. Soon after, authorities were called in and started a full search of the immediate area. What concerns me the most is the area Daniel went missing in. Being from the state of Florida, I've grown up in swampy areas my entire life. I even used to swim in them from time to time. Stupid of me, I know. Our swampy areas hold not only many dangerous critters, but also have endless nooks and crannies for someone to fall into and never be heard from again. This specific swampy region in the Perdido Bay area is highly infested with alligators. Unfortunately, the possibility of Daniel being attacked by one of these animals is relatively high. So much so that officials caught 2 alligators and cut them open, but to no avail. Multiple groups of civilian volunteers came together to search the area, walking shoulder to shoulder in groups of 25. They did this in a 5-mile radius of the area and combed it extensively, looking for any sign of Daniel. This massive group peaked at around 2,000 people, including 300 members of the local U.S. Navy and military bases, and over 150 law enforcement officers and firemen from Alabama, Florida, and other close-by states. Bloodhounds and other scent dogs were brought in to search the area, as well as jeeps, helicopters, horses, and more, but nothing would be found again. Not even the Nehi soda bottle was ever found. Somehow this 4-year-old boy vanished into thin air, never to be seen again. Divers searched from the top of the bay into the swampy areas, finding nothing again. The bottom of the lake was dragged and sinkholes and thickets were combed. Authorities hoped that in doing this, they might jar out a body that could be stuck on the bottom. Dynamite was even tossed in areas he may have fallen as well. This sounds a bit extreme, but I wouldn't be the authority. According to Daniel's mother, Daniel did not like the water. She doesn't think he would have gone into the bay alone. The bay was exceptionally shallow at that time of day, and you could walk a considerable distance without getting all that wet. The brush around the family's campsite was very thick and prickly. Daniel was only wearing a pair of shorts at the time, with no shoes. The Barter family does not believe he would have gone into the bushes either. After over a week of tirelessly searching the area, which turned up little to nothing, officials decided it was unlikely that Daniel had walked into the water or woods around them on his own. This was one of the most intensive searches ever conducted in Baldwin County's history. Authorities began to investigate the likelihood of this being an abduction, but they could never find any clues or evidence supporting this theory. The Barter family was not wealthy, and never received any ransom note or message, making a motive of ransom unlikely. Things would only grow stranger from here on out, though. According to Daniel's mother, roughly a month before Daniel would disappear, she claimed to have seen a mysterious unknown vehicle parked in front of their house. Maxine would allegedly approach the car and attempt to confront the driver. She said a man was driving, and he immediately covered his face with a newspaper and drove off. To make this claim a bit more valid, a neighbor of the Barter family claims they saw a man acting strangely and peering into the window of the room where Daniel and his brothers slept. The neighbor mentioned this to Maxine, and they investigated where the man had been standing. The man, of course, was gone, but he'd left footprints in the dirt under the window. They'd call the police, who came and photographed the footprints and took casts of them. Since this was nearly 60 years ago, it is unclear whether this evidence still exists. I do want to mention that even though this case is old, there's still a chance we can help progress it. While I do not have the highest hopes that justice will be brought here, I do still think it's unbelievably valuable to keep the memory and story of Daniel Barter going, if only as a cautionary tale for parents out there. The last thing I would like to mention in the timeline of strange happenings is that Maxine drove him and one of his brothers to the store on the morning of Daniel's disappearance. She parked and went inside, leaving the boys in the car. While she was gone, an unknown man drove up next to the Barter's car and stared at the boys for an uncomfortable length of time. Then the man suddenly drove away without speaking a word to them. Daniel's brother would tell Maxine about this encounter when she returned to the car. Due to this odd sequence of events, the Barters heavily suspect that someone had been stalking the family for some time, intending to abduct Daniel. Unfortunately, the case would go cold and fall inactive until recently. Nearly 50 years after Daniel disappeared, his case was reopened in 2008. That was more than a decade ago, and we are still in desperate need of help to bring justice to Daniel. Many original case files have been lost or destroyed in the last 6 decades, making this that much harder to piece together. But I've recently seen cases with less info be solved, so I believe Daniel Barter may have his day of justice. I found several theories online and articles about what happened to Daniel. I'll briefly touch on a few of these theories. The leading theory is, of course, that an unknown suspect abducted Daniel. Due to the timeline shared by the family, this is the strongest belief. The second theory, and one of the early theories in this case, is that Daniel accidentally drowned in Perdido Bay, but the family heavily refutes this as he did not like the water. But the tides were shallow and easy enough for a toddler to walk a fair distance without getting very wet. The third theory is that Daniel may have gotten lost while walking around the campsite. Since the brush was so thick, it wasn't impossible for Daniel to get turned around to become lost. But since the area was scoured, this is unlikely. The fourth and final theory is that Daniel may have been attacked and possibly eaten by an alligator. Now, this is a bit extreme, but this is not unfathomable in an area with several alligators. Multiple large gators were hunted in the area and gutted, but no evidence of human remains was found. Sadly, Daniel's father died in 1965, and his mother followed in 1995. They both died without knowing what truly happened to their son. All the siblings alive during the disappearance are still active and believe that Daniel is still out there, and hope the case will be resolved one day. In 2009, the family returned to the campsite to remember their missing brother, and dedicated a half-century mission to find him. Daniel Barter went missing from the Perdido Bay, Alabama area on June 18, 1959. He was just 4 years of age at the time, and was last seen wearing grey boxer shorts and carrying a bottle of Nehi soda. He was 3 feet tall and weighed 50 pounds at the time of his disappearance. His hair is brown, and so are his eyes. He has scars on his fingers and tongue. His case is currently labelled as a non-family abduction. If he's still alive, he will be in his mid-60s. If you, or anyone you know, has any information on this case, please send your tips to Baldwin County Sheriff's Office at 251-972-8589. You can always remain anonymous. Devil's Pickins by Corpse Child. Hey there, freaks and geeks of all ages. Tune on in, we've got a hell of a lineup tonight. And don't forget tonight's Devil's Pickins. That's right, tonight at around 3 a.m. we open the floor for suggestions for next picks for the next hour. I press the button to cue the demonic laugh. The same tired-out track that I'm surprised, out of all the calls we got, none of them were about getting a new one. But for now, lay back and relax in your infernal hot tubs, as our first hellish pick for tonight is... The phone started ringing. I tried ignoring it. Hades' Triumph by Severance, followed by... The phone continued to ring. It was to a point where it was drowning out the sound of my voice. I raised my eyebrow, looking at the time. It was only 11:30 p.m., not even time for the nightly Q&A segments, and our lucky devil giveaway was the night before. In short, there was no reason for some cocksucker to be calling right now. I waited about another half a minute for the damn thing to quit ringing, but it wouldn't. Finally, I rolled my eyes and picked up the phone. Hello, my fiendish little imp. We thank you for calling Reaper FM. Unfortunately, the floor is not open for... Sing me a lullaby. I paused. It sounded like a little girl on the phone. Well, hello there. Is your mother or father around? Sing me a lullaby. Well, I cleared my throat. Little lady, I appreciate you wanting to call me and all, but this isn't the right time to... I stopped and almost chucked the headphones out of the station window when I heard the shrill sound of wailing from the other end. Immediately, I smashed the end call button and began panting. I sat for almost a full minute, looking around the room before realizing the damn recording light was still on and picking up my headphones from up off the control panel. Hey, forgive me for that, boys and ghouls. Don't we all just hate wrong numbers? And I hit the terrified screaming track. Yeah, I bet that is pretty creepy, huh? All alone, dead at night, and suddenly the phone rings when you know it shouldn't from someone you don't know. But you know what's even creepier? Severance, with their hit song Hades' Triumph. Enjoy, you little devils. I hit play on the song list and sat back. What the fuck was that? I thought as the opening riff of the song kicked in. In seconds, the room was filled with overly aggressive guitar riffs and heart-stopping drum beats, followed swiftly by the lead singer's almost trademark opening howl of rage, marking the beginning of the song. With that, my anxiety almost immediately melted away. Howls from below, death in tow, and cries from the deep, rousing you from sleep. Before I knew it, I was headbanging the shit out of the music like I used to back in high school. Where the wolves howl, the air so foul, and innocent wombs are plowed, you all know to Hades you maggots bow. I even mouthed along to the chorus, Hades' Triumph. I was roused from concentration, however, when I heard the phone start ringing again. This time it was somehow so loud that it actually not only stood out from the music, overpowering as it was, but even managed to drown out most of the music. Like the first time, trying to ignore it did me no good because it just kept ringing and ringing. Even when the song ended and the next one that was significantly louder and heavier by the way, came on, the phone was still ringing. Rolling my eyes, I answered. Hello, my fiendish little imp. We thank you for calling Reaper FM. This time it was an older woman's voice, about mid-30s or so, softly saying, Will you sing for me? You always used to sing for us, remember that? I paused. Ma'am, I'm not sure what you're... The little girl's voice returned. Sing for us. Sing us a lullaby. They both then started repeating the words. Sing us a lullaby. I mashed the encore button again before returning to the soundboard to prep for the Q&A session. I closed my eyes and sighed. Just get through the next half hour, and then it's music again. I looked at the clock. It was 12:45. Freaking wonderful, I thought. Only 5 more hours till the AM DJ comes and I can go home and smoke myself stupid till 10. I eyed the mini fridge. No, better save the bangs for later. Well, folks, it's that time again. That's right, for the next half hour, DJ Tulu is taking any and all questions, requests, and possible deals. For the price of your soul, of course. I played the demonic laugh track and sat back. Now, typically, these go one of 2 ways. Either the phone immediately starts ringing off the hook, sometimes before I can even finish my opening speech for it, or I get no calls at all that night. Tonight was the first time, however, that neither was the case. Instead, it was almost 2 minutes, and therefore I wasn't expecting it, before the phone startled me by ringing out of seemingly nowhere. I quickly threw on my headphones and hit the answer button. Welcome, caller, our first of the night. What can Reaper FM do for you tonight? The sound from before, the sounds of wailing, blasted through my headphones, damn near giving me heart arrhythmia. Why do you hate us? The voices from before cried. My body still frozen, I heard the crying sounds build in tempo. Then I could hear the woman's voice shriek, followed by the little girl crying. Ma'am, calm down. Are you... I said, shut up, bitch, bellowed an almost inhumanly deep, growling voice that then began laughing. Ma'am, hello, are you there? Is everything okay? There was no reply. The wailing sounds also ceased abruptly. I was left all alone, quiet and dark in the studio room. My breathing was unsteady, caught between hyperventilation and heavy breathing. Prone, alert, waiting for the next surprise. Nothing happened. I looked at the time, 1:15 a.m., only another 10 minutes before the music got to come back. At least then I'd have some kind of noise in the background. About 1:20 rolled around and I was about to announce the Q&A was over and that The Siren's Cry by Taurus was up next, when the phone rang again. Now I almost didn't pick it up. Honestly, if I wasn't still trying to build up enough repertoire as a nighttime radio host for my portfolio, well, I aspired to be a voice actor, and therefore needed to keep this job at the station, I'd have been more than happy to let the bitch ring itself right on. Crank caller, distress, or legitimate caller be damned. But of course, aside from what I just mentioned, that damn phone was just too goddamn annoying to listen to. I picked up the phone, bracing for... well, I can't really say what I was bracing for, but something. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? The voice sounded panicked, like the other two, but it wasn't either the woman or the little girl's voice this time. No, this time it was a man's voice. Hello, please someone, anyone, please help us. It hurts so. I began to hear a cloud of static devour his voice. Sir, what's going on? Sir, are you okay? His voice struggled in and out of static, the way a drowning man fights for air. It hurts. He hates us. Please, help. I was about to try and call out to him again when that deep bellow from before came back as a low, rumbling sort of demonic laughter that grew slowly into a bestial roar. You get what you deserve. Now shut up and... I couldn't listen anymore because right at that moment, all at once, each and every one of the screams came back. The last thing I could hear, in a mix of both the demons and the little girl's voices, was, Will you sing me a lullaby, please? I sat there, staring bug-eyed and breathless at the discarded headphones. I shakingly reached out to pick them up again, when I noticed that they were glowing. I hesitated for a second before continuing to pick them up. They weren't hot at all, in fact, quite the opposite. They were so cold that my arm broke into goosebumps the instant I touched them. When I put them on again, the only thing I could hear was static, low and almost completely indistinct, sounding more like those rainfall ambiences you sometimes listen to fall asleep to. Well, that was until a couple of seconds later, I realized they were getting closer, growing in intensity and pitch. I realized it wasn't static at all, but the screaming again. I started turning a few of the knobs to try switching the stations. Funnily enough, those were red hot, blistering the shit out of my fingertips as soon as I touched them. Each and every frickin' one of them was like this too, leaving only the broadcast and playback buttons able to be touched. I pressed the broadcasting button and began asking if anyone was there or if they were okay and could hear me. Obviously, I got no answer other than the ever-growing noise. I noticed, too, that the room started to get extremely hot, scorching, in fact, to a point where I started feeling dizzy. Not only that, but even the chair I was sitting in started getting toasty on the backside, so I stood up, only to find that my pants had already somehow fused to the cushion of the seat. I was stuck. There was nothing I could do to escape or make any of this stop. I looked over to the window, intent on shouting, praying to God that I'd get lucky enough to catch some street bum's attention to come and get me the hell out of there, when I realized I couldn't even see the frickin' street anymore. All that was there now was a blank void. What the hell? Where's the street? Where am I? How long has it been gone? How could it be gone? My head spun in literally every possible direction. I mashed the broadcast button again. Hello? Someone? Anyone? Can anybody hear me? Hello? Hello, Andrew. My eyes were 2 seconds from exploding in their sockets. I heard the deep, rumbling, roaring laughter blast me from both sides of my headphones, causing my heart to jump. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to say hello, DJ Tool. Is that better? Why, who are... Just your lucky caller for tonight. Oh, hell, I've been one of this station's biggest and oldest fans. Always love hearing your stuff, listening to the music and all. So do the filthy maggots and harlots here with me, as you've no doubt noticed. Dude, what the hell do you want from me? I heard the laugh again. Well, now, that's an excellent question. Though I thought I was supposed to ask you the questions here, as the fan and all. Oh, fuck it, I'll humor you. Though the answer isn't about what I want from you, but instead what hell actually wants from you. I started throwing my head furiously around the room. I even peered out the window again. Everywhere I looked, no one was there. Where the hell even are you? Well, I'm everywhere. I'm inside each and every man, woman, and brat that has vomited up to this shithole Earth since its conception. Huh? Dude, that doesn't even make any sense. What the fuck are you? Whoa, slow down, Motormouth. As much as I love hearing your voice every night, I'm afraid you're starting to exhaust your good graces with me with all these interrogations of yours here. I mean, for fuck's sake. You haven't even given me a chance to answer your last question. You don't normally ask this many questions to people, do you? Oh, no, but then again, this shit usually doesn't happen either. The voice laughed again. Fair enough, I suppose. Though I think from here on, I'd like to do most of the talking if that's all right with you, Mr. Tahul, sir. Okay, whatever. Just tell me what you want here. That's better. Though again, it's not just about me tonight, but about what all of hell wants. Now, as I understand it, tonight is Devil's Pickins night, yes? Yeah, what about it? Well, as one of your longest fans, I think it's high time we cash in on that opportunity, yeah? But I can't do that yet. What do you mean you can't? I thought that's how this was supposed to work. We pick the songs and you play them. The room was unbearably hot now, sweltering. My breathing was heavy and my head felt light. The room began to spin and I thought I was going to collapse onto the panel in front of me. "What's wrong, DJ Tool? Cat got your tongue? The heat of the situation setting in, maybe?" I mashed the button once again. "What the fuck are you doing to me?" "So much for letting me do the talking, huh? Whatever. So here's the deal, pal." I heard the laugh again, this time smaller, more of a chuckle than a bellowing cackle. "Myself and the others with me, I mentioned before, are gonna make a few song requests, and you're gonna play them, got it? You know, just like every other Devil's Pickins night." I started panting. My vision went cloudy. I could barely even distinguish the knobs from the panel in front of me. Fine, okay, you win. Will you let me go if I do?" "Well, I am known for my deals, and a deal ain't worth a maggot's rancid turd if I don't hold up my end of them. I'll let you go tonight if you play our lineup for tonight's Pickins. Sounds fair?" "Yeah." Darkness was closing in. My body felt like it would have burst into flames at any second, just out of thin air. Suddenly, though, fresh air started to fill my flaccid lungs again. I coughed and sputtered. "Now, you ready for the first pick?" "Yeah, sure, whatever." "Good. Now for this one, I'm gonna let one of the underlings shoot their shots first." I heard the screams return, with the man's voice returning, sobbing. "I want to hear you play." "What? I can't hear you." I heard the man cry out in pain, with the deep voice roaring at him to speak up and quit crying like a little maggot. Play Hero by Skillet." I was confused for a second. I could hear the groans of agony also pick up in pitch. Then I heard an ear-splitting screech that was followed by a sickening squelching sound, then a gurgling death rattle. What the fuck was that?" "Look, disregard what he just said, you hear? That Pizemore has always been a pain in my tail. Both of them. Man, you try and do something nice for people, eh?" "What? Huh?" Anyway, so I think I'll let her go first then." "Wait, who are you?" The little girl came back. "Will you sing us a lullaby now?" "What are you talking about?" I could hear the demon voice laughing. "Oh, she's just so precious, ain't she? Well, you heard her. Play her a lullaby." But how? I mean, I don't have any." "Didn't your mother ever sing to you when you were her age?" Yeah, I guess so, but, Well, how fucking lucky for you. See, she never got to hear a lullaby. You want to know why?" I was about to try and reply that I really didn't. Sadly, he wasn't actually asking. "She never got to hear a lullaby because her mommy kept trying to kill her every night. Yeah, a real piece of work she was, huh? Oh, but don't worry, she's here too." The voice laughed and the little girl returned. "Please sing me a lullaby, Mr. DJ Tahula." I paused for a moment, unsure completely as to what the hell I was supposed to do. Don't know exactly how long I sat idle, but it was apparently too long for whoever it was on the phone, because the next thing I knew, the air in the room started getting thick and heavy again. This time I could even see my skin turning a bright pinkish sort of red, like a sunburn. "Getting hot in there, ain't it?" The voice laughed again. The little girl, I heard, started to break into tears. "Why won't you sing me a lullaby?" My throat felt tight, slowly choking me out. I reached out to push the answer button, which in itself felt like more of a struggle than it ever should have. "Why do you hate me?" The screams all returned. My skin was about to start blistering and my vision was darkening again. Finally, I managed to hit the button and start, sort of, singing. Rock-a-bye baby in the treetop. When the wind blows, the cradle will rock. When the bough breaks, the cradle will fall. And down comes baby, cradle and all. The air pressure returned to normal. I could breathe again. For a moment after, nothing happened. The other side was dead silent. Is that it? Are they finally gone? Well, ain't that just awful touching? All right, look, I sang you a damn lullaby. Just pick the next song already. The voice let out a roaring laugh. Jeez, kid, I'm just trying to have a bit of fun here. Not like there's anyone else on the line waiting, you know. The woman's voice came next. Play The Worlds Fall Apart by Devious Jackers. Okay. I started flipping through my records and CDs in the filing cabinet next to the panel. I don't have it. Check your playlist again. What? My playlist? On your phone. Go on, check it. I did. Opening up my playlist, right at the top was the song. My eyes widened. Wait, what the hell? I didn't buy that. Never mind that now. Just play it. And don't worry, it won't rack up any suspicious charges on your bank account. Just play it, and it'll be gone by sunrise. Sunrise, I thought. I looked at the time. It was now 4 o'clock. Only another hour and a half till the sun started coming up. Of course, I wasn't exactly sure how it all worked here, but my belief was that who or whatever these jack-offs were, they'd be gone by sunrise and this would all be over. Just another hour. I pressed the button to play the song. The song itself was almost 10 minutes long, with strung-out guitar solos and long periods of time where the vocalist just howled gutturally into the microphone. Usually, I'm all into that shit, but this time, couldn't tell why. But I was actually unsettled. The tune itself, like it was traveling inside of my body, battering all of my organs around, and then forcefully pulling out my spirit, or something like that. I don't know. I'm not religious. Finally, the song ended. Bravo, DJ Tulu. You really are the best host here, aren't you? Whatever. Look, just hurry up and pick the next song. You really ought to learn to relax, but as you wish. Now I think I'm feeling generous enough to let this fucker have another turn. What do you say? Ready to choose a song again? The man's voice returned once more, though this time it was mutilated, sounding like a mix of his original voice and that of the demons. Yes, master. I want to hear From Below by Leviathan. Like last time, I started flipping through the CDs as well as checking my playlist on my phone. Right as I was about to tell him I didn't have it, though. There it was, appearing spontaneously at the top above Worlds Fall Apart. Sighing, I hit play. The song was even more rending than the last. This song not only carried on for 3 times as long, but also didn't feel like even a song, but rather a weird-ass sort of ambience. Imagine these ambiences you'd hear of like an underwater setting or something, but instead of sounding like an aquarium or anything like that, all you hear is some gigantic thing growling like it's trying to say something. Don't even bother asking me what, for 30 minutes straight. That's exactly how long this song was. Weirder still, this one actually started having me seeing things. I imagined the world drowned in a red river, blood I assumed, with everyone in it crying out for mercy like the voices on the other end of the radio earlier. Then, from the river, I watched this tyrannical creature with 4 stupidly muscular arms, jagged, almost metallic-looking teeth, marbled, pitch-black eyes, and a giant maw that looked like it had swallowed the planet whole. I had no idea what it was trying to say, but I could see its mouth move in sync with the garbled lyrics from the music. Not only that, but the monster seemed to be looking straight at me as it spoke. The screams then started to emit from the body of the beast, with the people having actually fused with the damn thing to form this chimerical abomination straight out of a goddamn horror movie. That was when they all screamed out at me. "We are, all of us, together." The monster's body began to change, its slippery, scaly flesh dissolving away into that of a giant shadow that loomed over the world. The end. I remember screaming at this. Funny thing was, I wasn't even trying to scream. Yeah, I was scared and my mind was beyond fucked to the point of no real return, but despite this, I wasn't making a conscious effort to scream, even if just out of a reflex, you know. I guess I should say that I was somehow actually forced to scream. In any case, though, I came out of it sometime later and found that the song was over. I looked at the time. 4:45 a.m. Only another 15 minutes. I honestly wondered if I'd even last that long. Well, certainly a banger that one was, huh? I didn't respond for a good 2 to 3 minutes, still not convinced everything was back to normal again. Well, at least in the semi-general sense. Hello? You still with us here, DJ Tuhula? I hit the button. Yeah, I'm here. Look, Devil's Pickins almost over, okay? If you've got any more tracks to play, then let's get them over with. Oh, Christ on a stick, you ain't kidding. It really is almost up, ain't it? Well then, it's a good thing I saved the best for last. The screams, the roaring laughter, and the sounds from the last track all combined into one as I heard the voice say for me to play something called The Deal by The Fallen. My heart froze for a second as I shakily opened the playlist to find, like the other two, that it too poofed its way to the top of the list. Fearing a lot more about what would happen if I hesitated, I panic-mashed the play button. Immediately the speakers emitted the absolute single most high-pitched screech that was even earthly possible. It even caused sparks to fly from both the speakers and the panel. In seconds, the studio was filled with sparks flying like fireworks. I reached to hit the stop button when the phone itself exploded into flames. From there, the room caught flame, engulfing the entire room in only a minute. I frantically jumped up from my seat, now free to move again, and tried jerking the door open. It was stuck, so then I tried breaking the window. Somehow, though, even hurling the chair at it with all my strength was absolutely worthless. Over the chaos, through the headphones, I could hear the abominable voice laughing. How's this for a hot single, huh? What are you doing? Let me out. The voice laughed again. Well now, the song ain't over yet now, is it? You can't do this. You have to let me go. Not till the song's over. How's our deal, remember? You play my little selection and I'll let you go. Don't worry, this is the last one, I promise. Now I'm going to enjoy the rest of this song and you can go back to trying to beat the heat. I heard the laughing one last time before I heard the line on their end disconnect. I looked around the room. Everywhere, everything was swallowed in flames. I was trapped. There was nowhere I could go and nothing I could do. The flames crept teasingly, slowly coming toward me. Smoke now infested the air, suffocating me further. In seconds, I was gagging and wheezing. My vision clouded over, my arms and legs lost strength, and darkness spread across the room. And then, nothing. I couldn't see, feel, smell, or hear anything. It stayed like this for God only knew how long, and I'd have thought for sure that I was dead if it weren't for the fact that I was shaken awake by a firefighter. My vision was blurry, and my head felt like a sack of bricks had been taken upside it at full force. Well, where, Easy there, son, said the fireman. Just breathe. I tried to, and it resulted in a whooping cough. He then gently fitted an oxygen mask to my face. Here, now try. It was still a bit before I was able to, but I was able to start eventually breathing properly again. When the police arrived, along with my boss, the producer of the station, I was almost instantly barraged with questions along the lines of, "What in the unholy hell happened in the studio?" I'd have laughed at that, if only out of sheer morbid irony, but, of course, the condition of my lungs wouldn't have allowed that. Obviously, no, I didn't try explaining what any of that was that happened. Instead, I just told them that the equipment caught fire and the door and windows somehow got stuck. To be honest, if it weren't for the email I got just a few hours later when I got home, I'd have probably believed that. As it was, I found out that I owe my survival to a random tip from a deep-voiced fellow, as one cheeky nurse called it, that they'd seen the studio building on fire. I was rushed then to the hospital, where it was found, albeit rather quickly, that I was relatively unharmed outside of a bit of smoke inhalation. I was then sent home. It was there, though, that I got an email on my computer from an email that, as far as I was aware, couldn't be real. It read as follows. "Glad to know you got out of there, DJ Tavula. Can't have my favorite host getting all crispy on me just yet. After all, next Devil's Pickins night is next Friday, right? Well, gotta keep the maggots entertained till then. See you soon, Andy. Sincerely, your lucky devil. P.S. Don't worry about the studio. I'll personally see to it that it's up and running again." Something killed my friends in the woods. It won't let me remember it. By Frenetic Cenotaph. This happened to me in my late teens. I live in the middle of nowhere. Wasn't much to do in my hometown, which led a lot of us to get into drugs. Where we grew up, there were 3 paths. Going to college and getting out of there was unrealistic as no one could afford it. So this meant there were only really 2 paths. Join the cult, or join the rest of the dregs and derelicts. Now, before anyone asks, this cult was one of those weird neo-Christian super churches. They had this big compound further up the mountains with big white buildings all fenced in. Not too much is known about their beliefs, but most of the old people in the town belong to it, and they're all real creeps. Anyway, no one wanted to be a productive member of our community, so we all fell into this cycle of degradation. It's kind of comforting to live for nothing. This experience is what caused me to turn my life around. So most of us went on these huge benders for days at a time, camping out in the woods away from prying eyes. Imagine a hippie commune, but for much harder drugs and an extreme deficit of good vibes. Anyway, that location itself was a big clearing we used as a campsite. Derelict RVs and small structures littered the area. Everything was vandalized, and the ground was essentially a landfill, full of discarded clothes, bottles, cans, assorted paraphernalia, and a menagerie of unmentionable detritus. In 1,000 years, it would be quite the archaeological survey. Anyways, this particular story happened at the end of a particularly bad relapse, just when I was starting to get it together again. I arrived at the location to find it somewhat quiet. It was early autumn and the casual crowd had left, giving way only to the most devoted participants. From the moment I arrived, I had this sick feeling, the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. This grim feeling lingering over me is probably what kept me alive in the long run. I didn't partake in the festivities as much as I'd planned to. The bad vibes turned potential self-destruction into self-reflection, and I still drank with the others. Deeper into the night, I recall shambling out into the forest to piss. As I walked past the tree line for some privacy, I noticed something half buried in the leaf litter. I kneeled, staring at it for a good minute, trying to discern what I was observing. Like a puzzle, it fell into place as I realized I was looking at the partial leathery remains of a person. I stumbled back in disgust. Now, this had been known to happen on occasion. I was upset at the concept of a bunch of complacent, apathetic users dragging someone overdosing out into the forest. And I wanted to leave. I never wanted to change my life more than I did in that moment. And this feeling passed, and I returned to the drink. I remember getting upset with my friends and just being moody and depressed. I was deemed an honorary party pooper, and at some point, someone slipped me something, either to make things more interesting or just to knock me out. I remember stumbling to the end of the clearing before falling onto my hands and knees. I woke up in a daze, staring towards the campsite, watching something moving around, but my vision was too blurry to see clearly. As my vision returned, I saw it. It was this large, vaguely human shape. I couldn't see a definitive number of limbs, but my guess is many. Have you ever had eye floaters? Well, they're vague shapes in your vision you can't focus on. And this is how this being appeared. Even now in my memory, it's just a grey smudge. At least as tall as a person, and its limbs were long, about the length of its body. I tried to move, and the moment I did, the being's head craned around to scan the landscape. When its gaze passed me, I physically felt it, like a heavy weight on my head. This caused me to pass out again. I awoke to the monochrome twilight dawn. That time of morning when you can see, but there's no colour or sunlight visible yet. I was freezing. Remembering now, I think it's being so cold is what stopped it from detecting me. My body was concealed amongst the leaf litter, and I probably had bad circulation. Honestly, under normal circumstances, I consider myself lucky to survive this. I peeled my aching body from the frozen soil. As I approached the campsite, two smells hit me. The first was blood, like roadkill left out but not quite decomposing yet. That palpable smell you can almost taste. But the second was much more interesting. A sharp chemical scent similar to vinegar stung my nostrils. I saw the first body lying just outside the ring of small structures, twisted unnaturally with bright bone protruding from the otherwise dark form. I couldn't bring myself to examine or identify them specifically. I did count them though, and I was the only one left. Their bodies littered the campsite. All of them were twisted and pulled in odd directions, like how a child would play with their toys. I found the source of the blood. One girl was lying in front of me, her arms stiffly reaching up. The other half of her lay crushed against the side of the RV 30 feet away. I threw up as I searched everyone's pockets, trying my hardest to avoid eye contact. Tears streamed down my face as I lifted the keys out of a torn jacket. Examining the site one last time, I saw there were no signs of a struggle. It was like this thing just did this to them one by one, and none of them tried to escape. The second thing I noticed was how everything was covered in a black film. It was light in texture, and the surface of it had that sort of holographic reflection. I got into the truck we arrived in and left. I remember feeling guilty when I realized what I was about to do. I dumped the truck somewhere on the side of the road, and I never told anyone. I got clean, became a family man in this small community. Well, recently this story came up in therapy as I remembered it again. Till then, it had never really stuck out. It's just a drop in an ocean of hazy memories. I keep seeing the thing in my head. I don't think I'm supposed to remember it, but I keep seeing its hazy form everywhere I go. Well, not literally, but everything reminds me of it. The reason I'm saying this isn't to ask for forgiveness or because I feel guilty and have to get it off my chest. No, it's because last night I awoke to that sour, invasive smell. My eyes shot open, instantly recognizing it. My vision was blurry, but upon rubbing my eyes, I realized there was nothing wrong with them. I was staring into its foggy face once again. The weight of its stare put me to sleep. But I can't run this time. I have a wife and a daughter. I don't have all the answers. I don't know why it didn't hurt them or me. I don't know what it wants. Bleeder by Speaker for the Dark. The old man's chair was worn in a way that could only be achieved by long, faithful years of service, and could only be comfortable for him. This night, like so many others, he sat leaning back on the edge of sleep, his chin resting on his chest. Feeling his eyelids fighting to stay open, he took his feet off his desk and leaned forward. His groan pierced the silence, and his chair followed suit with a sharp squeak. When he'd sat down, the room had been illuminated with the last pink rays of the summer sun. Now only the light of several computer monitors gave the room a pale blue glow. The old man placed his elbows on the desk and rubbed his eyes. His ears rang in the silence, and for a while he sat quietly in the gloom. He thought back to the conversation he'd had with his daughter earlier that day. She and his granddaughter had brought him lunch like they always did when he worked double shifts. He was almost always stationed alone and could not leave the premises. The old man and his daughter ate lunch at his desk while his granddaughter, just 3 years old, wandered around the room. They watched the toddler turn knobs and press buttons on a radio probably thrice her age. He waved his daughter off before she could get up. He didn't mind. She was being gentle. Like so many other days, the conversation steered towards money and his coming out of retirement. His daughter, recently a single mother, could never shake the guilt of the financial burden she'd placed on her father, forcing him out of retirement. Like always, she insisted they get by if he quit. And, like always, he assured her he was fine. The old man blinked hard and peered at the screens. He stood up with a jingle from the keys on his waist and a squeak from his chair. A reflective patch on his chest read, "Security." A look of indifference filled his face. He walked across the room and flipped on the radio. The sound of static filled the air, and his eyes scanned the preset radio stations. Impatiently, he chose one at random. As he was walking back to the security monitors, the radio was momentarily silent. Suddenly, and loudly, Lacrimosa by Mozart started to play. The old man turned with a start to quiet the radio when something caught his eye and stopped him in his tracks. There he stood, mouth gaping, eyes unblinking as he stared at the screen. The eerie rises and falls of the vocalizations assaulting his ears, now seemingly unnoticed. Through the security cameras pointed outside, he'd seen something lumber partially into the greasy light of the security gate. Its dull and glazed eyes searched from left to right lazily, its long tongue snaking and darting through jagged teeth like a river through harsh stones. Abruptly, its fleshy, muzzled face jerked up in the direction of the camera. Loose skin hung from its snout, and grotesque, flapping jowls. Its eyes were filled with recognition and malice. A toothy grin filled its mouth. The old man watched, helplessly frozen in fear, as it scaled the security fence and pulled itself through the barbed wire at the top. Sharp steel sliced through pale, hairless flesh. It slumped to the ground wetly. There it lay for a moment before it stood again. If the radio had not been blaring, the old man would have heard the shrill, sobbing wails of the creature as it attempted to recover some of the blood it had lost. Long, spindly fingers frantically scraped blood into pools by its feet, and it drew the blood through puckered lips before peering over its shoulder in the direction of the camera, and then disappearing from sight. The old man, seemingly broken from his trance, looked to the camera pointed at the main entrance of the building and blindly groped for the receiver on his desk. The old man knew the main entrance was the closest and most obvious way for someone, or something, to get into the building, but the creature was nowhere to be found. Desperately, he searched the monitors for a sign of the creature and managed to blindly find the receiver of the phone. He'd held the phone for a few seconds and, absent-mindedly, almost placed it back on the hook. He forced his eyes away from the screen long enough to dial 911 with quivering fingers. The phone rang in his ear. The old man reeled and retched. Vomit splashed on his hands and legs over the phone. He'd seen it, now around the back of the building, standing hunched by the night guard's entrance. It stared into the camera knowingly, its grin replaced with a snarl. They locked eyes through the camera. Then, violently, it sprang forward to the door on insect-like legs. Closed hands slammed on the door with ruthless efficiency. The chorus momentarily fell to a murmur. The old man faintly heard a metallic clang. Heavy metal lay on the floor, a crumpled pile of bloody steel. The creature's hands hung like tattered rags at the end of long, strong arms. Globs of dark blood splattered on the floor. It dived after its blood, now flowing down the hallway in an inky red river leading to a drain in the middle of the floor. It sopped up what it hadn't lost to the drain with a long, lapping tongue. The creature then continued down the hall, sucking on the tatters that used to be its hands, unperturbed by its injuries, but enraged by the loss of blood. In a moment of panicked clarity, he raised the phone to his ear. The faint voice of the dispatcher could be heard below the ear-splitting melody playing over the radio, now reaching its final crescendo. The old man dropped the phone. The only way they would hear him was if he turned off the radio. He leapt across the room and swept his arm across the table where the radio sat, knocking it to the floor. And, with a crash, there was silence. For a moment, the old man stood unmoving, lost in thought. Would he ever see his girls again? The overpowering smell of iron filled his nostrils. Slapping footsteps crossed the room. He pushed his mind off the situation, and his thoughts clung to the memory of his marriage with the love of his life, the mother of his child long since passed. Tears filled his eyes. He pictured his granddaughter's face and wept. The old man's heart dropped. Behind him was the familiar squeaking sound he'd heard so many times. He dared not look. At the sound of the phone clicking back on the receiver, the fear left his eyes and was replaced with cold acceptance, tears still streaming down his face. He dropped to his knees and resigned himself to his fate. Candle by Colton, Serialphobe N. When a tragedy happens, it's the most peculiar thing. There's no music to build tension, there's no foreboding, ominous presence. There isn't something stitching together inclinations that maybe anything else aside from the ordinary is ever going to transpire. The moment it does, however, the moment a cataclysm rears its foul maw and bares its fangs of grief, comes and goes in the blink of an eye. It quickly leaves only the observers and survivors to witness the wake of its unpredictable rage. The first day I witnessed him, my mother had just passed away. I was 17 when it happened, nothing more than a background character in a school full of similar souls. I remember it was a cold day in November, and there was a buzz among the students for the 4-day weekend we were granted in light of Thanksgiving. We were all eager to leave for the break. This prospect hung in the shadow of semester finals which stood between us and our reprieve. My mum worked as the English teacher for juniors, situated on the lowest floor of the school. The walls that edged her descending stairs were clad in exposed water and gas lines. They sat with a stark contrast against the concrete. The stairs were made of that weird rubber or maybe vinyl that altogether led to a classic prison presentation. I was in my science class that morning, working in a small team with my best friend and some girl we used to know. Our assignment for the day? I couldn't tell you. I honestly can't recall much else of that day except that we were working on our finals. Everything that ensued happened so quickly. It was awesome in the way that it was awe-inspiring, but the awe was for the abject fear that followed. As I recall, we were wrapping up the evidence needed for our report when, without any introduction, my ears popped like I'd rolled down the window in a fast-moving car. This was immediately followed by a jarring rumble that shook the whole classroom and a deafening, concussive force that stole the breath from my lungs. A shower of water followed immediately after, because the fire alarm was triggered. I swiftly arose from my desk and my chair shot backward. Clattered with a startling force against the table behind me. We abandoned our finals where they were and exited down the aisle between our desks with a surprising amount of order. I noticed the piercing fire alarm as our teacher wasted no time and directed us out of the classroom. We followed orders with a deep and uncertain silence. We were orchestrated by the teachers like frightened animals, herded towards the nearest exit. Down the hall and to the left, downstairs to the lower level, and then outside. When I rounded the corner with my mother's classroom coming into full view, I was greeted by a conceptual nightmare. I was suddenly and firmly frozen in place.
My heart seemed to stop, and yet it was beating harder than it ever had before. My mother's classroom door, blown off its hinges, lay against the opposing wall in a splintered heap. The space between the door and the frame was filled with an enraged inferno, desperately and forcefully bellowing from within. I was the observer, who was now left to bear witness to this wake. I don't know what I thought when I ran into that fire. I don't know if I thought I could save her like some invincible superhero, or if I was simply running in because I needed to. I don't know. I broke through the wall of flame and smoke, and immediately after the doorframe, the fire was no longer burning. I descended the staircase in a manner fitting of an infant, erratic, frantic, and without coordination. I lost my footing halfway down the stairs and fell with abandon, but I was lost in adrenaline and hardly noticed, regaining my balance on the last few steps. It was almost cold once I reached the bottom step. I heard someone crying in the room. Even though it was almost pitch black inside the veil of smoke, a small window lit the desk where my mum would sit. The person who was wailing in apparent agony was across the room, however. I broke out in a nervous sweat as I began my search, guided by the sound. I was gagging at the smell of burning flesh and hair. It didn't take long for my eyes to dilate to the darkness and return my gift of sight. I still wish they would have failed me just that once. The images seared themselves deep into my psyche. Burnt bodies and their wayward limbs littered the floor. Some were smouldering like paper as a thin line of bright red crawled greedily up the blackened skin and turned to ash. Catastrophic. Disgusting. That mouth-watering feeling crept over my tongue as it does when you're about to throw up. I heaved at the sight, barely managing to hold it down. Through a power only granted to me in the fight of fight or flight, I averted my attention to the crying again coming from an overturned desk in the opposing corner of the room. That has to be my mum. She's still alive, I so naively thought. I reached for the desk, almost tripping over the chest of a less fortunate classmate. I also heard new alarms, carbon monoxide and dioxide detectors that survived the detonation. I wish I'd listened to my gut and left the scene to the imagination, but I didn't. I was almost to the desk when I looked down at another body. This one was slightly larger than the rest. It didn't take long for me to understand that this was my mom. She was missing the right side of her face. Her eyes showed a milky white and her jaw was slack. She had no arm or leg. Dead. My mother was dead at my feet. Crying erupted from behind the desk again, with no audible words, just sobbing. I left my mum's side to help this person, the shock keeping the crippling sadness at bay. It hadn't fully dawned on me at this point that no one could ever have survived this disaster. The crying filled my head the closer I got. I was hearing it with my ears, but also my thoughts. It blocked out the sounds of the various alarms that were screaming at me to get out. It was like I was lost in a daydream in which the crying was the focus. It blocked out everything. I reached the desk and tentatively peered behind it. I focused on an illuminated figure curled up in the corner. He had blackened skin like the rest of them and almost no hair. He trembled, facing the corner of the wall, his body lightly convulsing like it was being electrocuted, arms held out beyond its sides with its hands limply hanging from the suspended forearms. "Hey," I yelled. "We have to get out. There's a gas leak." The figure didn't respond. I thought maybe the explosion had damaged his hearing. I reached over to him and grabbed his hand. He stopped crying when our skin touched. The trembling mostly stopped too. He slowly started to turn his head toward me. It limply followed his neck in quick little snaps as it turned. And then I saw his face. Leathery skin stretched across his bony skull, and his white eyes were like my mother's, milky grey and white. Brown teeth showed through a slack jaw with no lips. A withered nose sat broken upon his face. He was naked, displaying the leathery skin that continued down his nude frame. Some of the skin was sloughing off at points of stress, from which an infected-looking, foul yellow fluid oozed forth. I looked at him in shock, his body jerking and heaving. He shuddered as his head rocked like a newborn to face me. I looked into his eyes as he took a rattled, strained breath and bellowed a sound unlike any I'd ever heard. No, that's not the right way to portray this sound. The sound created a feeling inside of me that wasn't exactly mine. I was forced into a feeling of absolute grief, pure pain. I felt absolutely and completely overwhelmed with guilt, unlike any I'd ever known. I threw myself back from the desk and fell upon my mother's corpse. A cloud of ash rose from her smouldering body and washed over my face as I gasped. I inhaled my mother's ash. I vomited on myself as I rose to my hands and knees to crawl away. Tears streamed forth like a ruptured dam that threatened my existence. I crawled and then ran once I found my footing. I ran out of that room through the fire. I ran through the school. I ran out past my classmates, and I kept running. I ran and ran and ran until my legs couldn't carry the weight of my body and my experience anymore. Just keep running. Police found me collapsed in a local park. I remember the cold, crisp grass caressing my face, leaving behind wet stains from its melting lash in the throes of my despair. I thought I would have at least run towards home. Instead, I ran in the opposite direction. The officer that found me sat with me in the field for a while and just listened to me sob. He didn't offer me any words of advice nor words of encouragement. He didn't rush me even when we both were shivering to our core once the cold seeped through our skin and lay with our bones. I fell asleep in that field, wishing the air would escape my lungs and never return. Oh, I was so tired. I awoke when the officer drove me home. The following year, though eventful, passed by in a blur. I remained in my mother's home for a short while at the mercy of my aunt and uncle who were awarded temporary custody of me. I was offered a life insurance payout that was locked in a conservatorship. I'm not one to look a gift horse in the mouth, however, so I thank my stars because my aunt didn't take my money. She pulled out of the settlement as soon as it was released to her and gave me a big stack of cash. It was too much for a 17-year-old to have while attempting to remain a responsible member of society. I was also quickly awarded emancipation in light of the funding. I soon began to fuel an addiction that left the hole in my soul full of even more regrets. Another few months passed by in the blink of an eye, probably because I was strung out. I was always riding a line between high and barely conscious. As anticlimactic and foreseeable as it was, I overdosed on heroin. I was found by my aunt in my home. She didn't deserve to see what I'd become. She was too good to be exposed to my filth. I was watching some nature documentaries when I decided I wanted another hit. Set my band, found a good vein, pumped my body full of liquid bliss. Was it my 5th hit? 6th? More than I'd ever done before. The rush came on too hard. Too hard. I instantly lost my balance and collapsed on my couch, head swimming. I'd passed out like that and vomited in my stupor. I think I was dying at the time. I vaguely remember my aunt's scream once she walked through the front door. I'm sure I looked just like the death I was longing for. I was put through rehab and then on suicide watch once the story came to light. My therapist thought that what I saw in my mum's classroom was a manifestation of my mind, like something I created to personify the hell I was experiencing at the time. Over the next several months, I began to feel like a waste despite everyone's best efforts. My weeks turned into months, and progress became a slow burn on my road to emotional and mental recovery. No matter what I was taught, what tools I was provided, and what mental gymnastics I performed, I kept sinking deeper and deeper. The craving for substances kept its sick claws locked tightly around my heart. Over the next year, I found myself clinging to a reclusive lifestyle. I dropped out of school and became a shut-in. My life became a blur in the face of this newfound depression. I traded one vice for many more, watching porn and gaming all day, loathing my existence late into the long and lonely nights. Even in sleep I was plagued. I had such vicious night terrors, unrelenting and boundless in their pursuit of my rest. At my emotional lowest, I stopped caring to meet my basic needs. My body was constantly utilizing kyphosis to keep me alive. I was a vile wreck, becoming the personification of that which was my mind. I was a mirror of my mentality. I was losing the battle. Do you want to know the truth about depression? It's not some, woe is me, I'm sad bullshit. And depression is the opposite of happiness. Happiness is proactive and engaging. It has to be created and earned to be nurtured, and it will grow on its own. Depression is everything that happiness is not. Depression comes from stagnation. Depression isn't cured and isn't wanted. It's torn into being whether you had it from birth and sat on the genetic time bomb, or it was thrust upon you against your will. Depression is the absence of emotion that we innately use to protect ourselves. If I can't feel, I can't hurt. It's the absence of feeling the desire to care. It is apathetic, dark and abysmal, alone and unafflicted. I can't care to eat, I can't care to meet new people, I can't care to shower or brush my teeth. I can't care to keep up with living. I've learned and lived this hell. I hope you never have to. If you are, I know it's hard to care, but please talk to your friends and family or ask someone for help. People will be there for you. You just have to find them. But I digress. My life started a journey in a new direction, birthed from ruptured, hemorrhaging existence that I unknowingly came to find comfort in. So simple, that spark. I laughed, not like a chuckle or a little nose smirk, a belly laugh. The sound was foreign to my ears. I was confused but oddly excited. I was so proud of myself. Soon after that, I went from a reanimated corpse to an animated individual. My new addiction was growth. I chased this feverishly. I built myself up and created a barricade that could withstand the deluge of my mind. I calmed the rancor that consumed me without fail. I regained control. One step at a time, hand over hand, I crawled a feeble yet indomitable ascent up that mountain. I knew I had to depart my home to continue my emotional development. Without a second thought, I left my home to my aunt, packed up and moved out to Florida. Hell's waiting room. Florida was great for a short time. I lived in a small vacation cabin by myself in the Everglades. I established myself as a transfer student, waiting until next year for my college courses to begin. Now, this was a lie, but one I found some solace in telling. I didn't have to tell it often, as no one lived around me for miles. My lot was on a private property which was owned by a pleasant couple who were never home. A dense and humid forest enveloped my establishment. This was a treat for me because it gave me time to confront my introspections and ultimately contributed to my road to recovery. Sure, it was the same reclusive lifestyle, but here I was free. Also, something about 80 degrees Fahrenheit in winter was better than I thought it would be. The forest surrounding me was beautiful, lush and vibrant. You could frequently hear the birds sing and bugs whine late into the evening as the sun departed the sky and lay to rest beyond the western horizon. It was a welcome change from the stark nights of my hometown. I would even go fishing occasionally at an ocean-fed creek just a few minutes from my house. It was exactly what I'd wanted. My life was mine again. The memories of that night, though painful, were easier to experience. I was nearly able to say, I'm happy. Until I heard that crying again. The uncontrollable sobbing returned nightly as the sun passed, leaving me alone to face this manifestation, or creature, entity. The wailing filled my nights until I was no longer able to sleep. I could only rest during the day. The day was safe. A few times a week, his lonely howls would penetrate the thin walls of my home. I thought maybe the crying was just a relapse of depression, like PTSD in soldiers. But it kept getting closer. Every week the sound would get louder. I would lay awake and find myself begging for it to stop. I would listen to it and focus on it as if I was going to find some words within these rattling gasps. It was the same way it was in that school. It filled my head and blocked out everything. It forced me to feel a torrent of forgotten pain. Oh, my barricade was fracturing. My rancor was waking up. My war returned with a windfall that left me breathless. I broke so quickly, so quietly. Like sand in the palm of my hands, my joy slipped away through my fingers. My laugh died in my throat. One night I awoke from a nap that turned into full-blown sleep. Felt like I was awoken by something, though it was silent outside. I looked at the time, 1:26 a.m. It was the middle of the night, but no crying at least. I quickly got up and looked out of my bedroom window. Nothing. Maybe it was just a raccoon trying to get into my trash, I thought. I made myself some coffee to help keep me awake through the night. Coffee had become the only thing I'd drink. I made some food, canned salted potatoes with a hint of chicken dumplings, and brought it back to my room. I sat down and addressed my fears as I tried to do on silent nights prior to this. Lately I've been convincing myself that maybe I'm witnessing him because I hadn't got over the events of that day. Maybe it was a symbol of the worst day of my life, a catalyst upon which my normalcy lay flayed in some blood eagle-like fashion. Maybe it's just that my subconscious had unintentionally held on to what could have been, and manifested as that in my day-to-day life. I became foolishly bold at this rationalization, told myself to go open the front door, like that was going to make the fear end. I figured if I'd confronted the atrocity and saw that there was nothing there, I could also make it go away, all of it. I set my food and coffee down as I arose from my seat and shuffled to the front door. There was no crying tonight. It was just calm and peaceful, as I had every night before, honestly not expecting to see too much aside from an eerie shadow. But there it was, staring through the little glass window back at me, face to face, separated by not even half an inch of glass. An eruption of screams washed away the silence and shook my house. My kitchen light showed through and illuminated his face. It's a face I can never forget. His jaw was chattering, gaping, and closing between breaths. As he exhaled, a sticky fog clung in Rorschach patterns to the otherwise unblemished glass. His eyes stared straight ahead at nothing, as though he was lost in the grip of indefinite madness. He quivered again as he took several slow, unsteady steps backward and crouched on the ground just feet from my door. He was real. I screamed at him out of reaction. It was guttural and primitive. There were no words I could offer my emotions to appease this sickening sensation. I was angry. I was scared. I was sick of not sleeping, not having my life. I moved across this goddamn country to get away from this, and here it was, huddled up mere feet from the only comfort I had left. This was some sick fucking joke my brain was playing on me. Leave me alone, I managed to yell, my voice cracking as I started to sob. Leave me alone, please. My voice sounded more like a caged dying animal, unrefined. It kept screaming outside of the house as it rose to its feet again. Standing upright, it walked in slow and sporadic movements back towards my door. It arched awkwardly backward like the abdominal muscles lost the ability to keep the torso upright, tearing the skin as it leaned. Yellow liquid again seeped from the wounds. "Leave me alone," I yelled again with a level of emotion I hadn't felt in years, but my plea fell on rotted and deaf ears. It reached my door. I'd rehearsed this moment in my earlier days of coming to the forest. Over and over I would think about what I would do to end my maddening reality. Didn't want to kill myself, though, so I had made this thing the effigy upon which my mental decline rested, that which should be eradicated. In my panic, and on instinct, I grabbed at the fire axe hanging above my table and mechanically threw my body at the thin door that separated us. A wordless and loud scream of fear, disgust, and hatred erupted from between my clenched teeth when I crashed through my door. The thing was hit by the door, the force unapologetically colliding with it. It fell backward, and a feral gasp emitted from the bottom of his throat. I was going to kill it now. Kill it. Kill me. Candle. Kill. The words echoed on an asynchronous loop inside my head. I fell down the steps as my unbraced momentum carried me forward, flailing as I fell to the unforgiving earth. I found myself on my feet before I'd even processed that I'd fallen. But then I was face to face with it. Its breath was too hot, too sticky. The smell of rotten decay filled my nose. I recoiled in fear at the smell and the close proximity. I backed up until I was pressed against the wall of my house. I lost my nerve. I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't capable. Then screamed and heaved and shook in front of me, its milky eyes still looking beyond me, hands outstretched. And with the scream, courage and rage returned to me. It was the same as it was all that time ago in the school. I was feeling something that I wasn't actually feeling. It was my feelings, but I wasn't the one feeling them. God, it's so hard to explain. I embodied those feelings, though, and let them wash over and consume me. Kill. The word was on repeat in my head. I sprung forwards and swung my axe with a primal scream, burying the blade deep in its side. The feeling of bone deflecting the axe upwards was a sensation I still haven't forgotten. Blood and other fluid spewed from the wound. I took a few sideways steps in retaliation against the momentum of my assault. It stopped crying, shaking, even breathing. Time froze as he finally looked at me. I was rooted in place by my fear. We stared at each other for what felt like an eternity. Our eyes locked, and that foul breath returned with a vengeance. Nothing happened beyond that. We just stood there. I willed my bones to thaw. My mind, once racing in terror and fevered rage, was now feeling pride? No, it was something else. But a victorious emotion nonetheless, I think. I didn't notice he'd reached out and gently gripped my arm, only becoming aware of it myself once it started to speak. "I never meant to scare you," he said in this torn-up voice, struggling between shallow breaths. "Sorry this had to happen to you," it said. His eyes welled up in pain while it clutched the axe in the new laceration with his ragged hand. "Please, kill me," he wheezed, the words forming inside of my head but also reaching my ears. He took the axe with its other hand and brought the blade to its neck. "Kill me, Candle. Kill. Now." The final word sounded like an explosion in my head as it put its hand on my face. Everything went black for a fractured moment once I'd swung my axe. Suddenly I felt like I was falling through space, a void. The air around me became cold as the wind whipped past me. I descended without limits, and it was nauseating. I started shrieking in utter confusion and terror. Down and down, faster and faster I fell. Did I die? Is this death? Oh, I'm dead. And other thoughts of my probable end dominated my courage. Oh, I didn't want to die yet. In the distance, far below me, was steadily expanding light. Fresh tears streamed from my eyes, making it hard to tell how far away it was, how much longer I had until I would be halted by the ground. And it was coming up fast, though. I closed my eyes and screamed, this time in defiance to the face of my inevitable death. I want to live. I want to live. I wanted to live. I curled into the fetal position and braced every muscle in my body, anticipating my brutal ending. Seconds later, I collided with the floor with a soft and gentle thud, like I'd fallen off a couch. A meek squeal departed with my pride in tow. I uncoiled my limbs and lay there for a time, paralyzed by the fresh confusion and exhaustion. Was that death? Was I still alive? I was aware, at least. I took note of what I felt under my hands, and I noted that I was on a hardwood floor. I opened my eyes, or tried to. If I did open them, it was too dark to see anything, completely black. I rolled over to my back, extending my arms as far as I could. I didn't feel any walls. I then reached my unseen hands towards my face. Am I blind? Do I have eyes? My dirty, sweaty hands met my open eyes with more force than intended. It burned, a lot. My eyes were definitely open. At least I still had eyes. I chuckled lightly to myself, tears still falling, and I let out a weak, triumphant sigh. I guess at this point, I fainted. I awoke sometime later to an unfamiliar hallway, but at least there was light this time. I glanced around from where I lay on the floor. I was in a hallway. Old, deformed dark wood floors stretched into the endless dark in either direction. A thick layer of dust rested upon the handles of 2 doors on either side of me. Each door was illuminated by its own candle, and small shadows danced in the wake of the curling white paint. Aged, red and gold, ornate walls framed the hall, and they too stretched uninterrupted out of sight. The air was still, thin and cold. I pushed myself to my feet, taking a reflexive breath as I did, but my lungs didn't work. I couldn't pull in the air. God, it was unnerving, but I was too shaken to be scared by something like that. With an unexpected amount of acceptance, I thought to myself, maybe I really am dead, and maybe this is limbo or something. Now, standing, I sauntered over to the door on my right, brushed off the collected dust and tried turning the bronzed knob. It didn't budge in the slightest. I turned around and tried the other door, and the same thing. I've heard of death being like that. The dead person has to wander about the realm until they can finally rest their soul. If there's nothing to be learned, well, then it's purgatory. Being well aware of the probable circumstance, I initiated my walk down the hall into the dark. Slowly, the light faded in the distance behind me. I kept roaming for hours, dragging my right hand along the wall as I went. I wandered without causality into the endless darkness. I noticed I wasn't getting tired or hungry. I must be dead. If this is all there is, I don't want it. Just nothingness. That's a reality the gods abandoned long ago. I started to jog in an attempt to keep my composure. The thought of turning around was tangible but not obeyed. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. A new light split the darkness from behind me. I was so startled that the sharp and icy pain of fearful surprise caught my chest. I tensed, flailed, and tripped over my own feet with a breathless yelp. Smooth as gravel. I rolled out of it with unexpected grace, and I turned around, launching myself backward. I went careening toward my unexpected prize, like the light would disappear if I didn't get to it fast enough. Once I reached the light, I desperately grabbed at the handle of the nearest door to stop my momentum. The handle remained absolutely solid and didn't flex in the slightest as it stopped me. The ignorance of my reality was breaking. I couldn't actually be dead, could I? I wasn't safe. I wasn't okay. I'm not okay. I seized the knob with both hands and gave it everything I had to open it. I ran my shoulder into the door, pulled on it, hit it, kicked it, and pleaded with it. Nothing. I fell back and collapsed against the door, kneeling and burying my face in my folded arms. The tears then came again because I didn't know what to do. I couldn't go anywhere. It was pointless to move on. I was stuck here. This was my punishment. I rolled over to my side, hugging my legs close to my chest, and I simply just stopped trying. I gave up. I lay there curled in a ball for months, or maybe it was years. I didn't move an inch according to the layer of dust that blanketed my body. Stagnant. I was stagnant yet again. So what? I was done with this. I was done fighting for my right to live. I was done trying to escape my apparent destiny. I was so sick. I found myself beginning to rot as I lay there. But some small voice spoke from deep within me. A voice that told me to keep going. Reasoning that said, why? Well, why not? It nagged at me relentlessly. My will to stay still grew stale with time. But eventually I caved and I began to stir. My bones creaked and cracked in response to the small, beckoned movement. My skin ripped and every muscle in me screamed a retort with every twitch. But I moved. I wanted something different because that couldn't be all it was. It took some time, but I found my way to a sitting position. I was freshly motivated to keep trying, but my body still held tight to my folly. Move. Again, a new light ruptured the darkness, but it grew brighter and brighter. This was the brightest thing I'd ever seen. The endless walls were now fully clad with old white doors and their furiously burning candles. I shielded my eyes from the exposure and recoiled from the heat. Glancing through my fingers, I saw something else I'd never seen before. The end of the hallway. Out was there. The continuation was there. Fire was lit in my soul. I forced myself to stand, using the wall as a brace to accommodate my feeble legs. There was so much pain, but I went from a shaky shuffle to a stiff speed walk. In hindsight, I'm sure this was a nightmarish visage. At that moment, however, I never wanted anything more than to reach that final door. I ran with everything I had, which wasn't much. I felt like I was baking alive as I proceeded. I also noticed each door had a number as I glanced at my surroundings. They were going up. 37, 39, 41, 43. I squeezed my eyes shut again and ran as fast as I could. Blinding light tore through my eyelids with a spectacular white-out brightness. Searing pain gripped my every nerve. Maybe I should have at least checked how far away the end was, because I hit the wall with a solid thump, breaking my nose, and the ricochet threw me to the floor. Every candle extinguished except the one for the door in front of me, number 158. Endless darkness returned behind me, so I focused on the door and that last lit candle. 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 The word bounced around my mind with an unwavering significance. A familiar strange voice pierced my mind. Kill a candle. His unforgettable ragged voice rang out from the darkness. A low rumble began to form in the distance and grew steadily ever louder. Something was coming, and I knew it to be nothingness. I felt it deep in my bones. A fallible end, a hard stop. A fear unlike any I'd ever known stabbed at my stomach. I clasped the doorknob, hoisted myself up, and twisted. Nothing. It didn't move in the slightest. The rumbling was closer. I tried turning the other way, and it still didn't move. What little composure I had left was dwindling. I shook the door as the rumble began to reach a clamorous crescendo that I couldn't withstand. It was right behind me. Panic. I yanked frantically on the door, and a muted scream escaped my mouth. "Kill Candle." Words thundered over the approaching roar. Impending doom and action. I was shaking the door with everything I had left when it finally dawned on me. Kill the candle. I smothered the flame with my bare hand, and the door finally swung open, but of its own accord. It was like I'd defiled an airlock, because I was suddenly and ruthlessly sucked into the chasm beyond the door, thrown into the void yet again. The cacophony ceased behind me, and I felt as though I was being slung across the universe at an impossible speed. I spun and flailed out of control. I was yet again no longer in control. Then, as quickly as it began, it stopped. I was suddenly standing outside of my house and instantly observing a perplexing movement frozen in time. I saw myself, not the conscious me, but the other one that remained on Earth from the moment I was ejected into the hallway. I saw myself standing there with the axe in mid-swing. The blade was just beginning to connect with that thing's neck. I took an unsure step forward, and I was immediately flung back to that body. I melded with him and became reunited, soul and bone. Time also resumed, and I felt the axe carry out its intended purposes. The tear, in reality, came birthed from its arc, and I was yet again quickly forced through the sieve of reality. The jarring blackness blanketed the world, and my axe hit something solid, a metal. Everything was dead quiet, but I smelled a familiar mustiness that reminded me of high school. Instantly my vision came rushing back, accompanied by intense vertigo. I was in my mother's classroom. Bewildered, I looked on my left and saw her, and she saw me. I glanced over my shoulder, and the entire class was staring at me in horror. I looked back to my hands in reaction to the sudden attention, the strangeness of the situation momentarily lost on me. I then noticed that the axe was buried in the gas line, and an audible hiss was apparent in the silence. I looked back to my mum, and upon her desk sat a single burning candle. The candle. The candle. The candle. 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 The candle. I let go of my axe without allowing time to think and sprinted towards the desk to put it out. But I was too late. The classroom ignited. It shook the entire foundation. I was blown into the wall and fell limply behind a desk. My body was blackened from the blast, and my bones were broken, but I held on to my consciousness. Don't know how, but I was moving toward my mum before I knew it. Mum just laid there, torn to pieces, but still alive. I crawled the best I could to her side, my body in shock. I reached for her hand, but instead found a severed limb. Reaching out for her remaining arm, she found mine, gripping it the best she could. "Mom," I sobbed. "Mom, I'm sorry." I cried over her. "I'm so sorry, Mom." She was looking at me when she tried her best and spoke. "I love you," she whispered, trying her best to smile. Then her grip lost its force and her hand slipped away as gravity took a stronger hold. I collapsed again, laying my head on her searing shoulder while flames leapt from her burning clothes and scorched my wet eyes. Well, I couldn't have cared less then. I felt bile rising in my throat again once the whole picture was almost clear. I didn't kill the candle. I failed. I had another chance, and I failed. Yet again, for the 158th time, I failed. I didn't deserve to hold her. I needed to get away. I dragged myself to the corner of the room behind a desk. My arms hung at my side, covered in my mom's blood. I didn't want to touch anything. My hands. Me. I killed my mom. I shook in the corner, and my otherworldly scream of pain and sorrow shattered the air. Someone spoke from behind me. "Hey," he yelled. "We have to get out. There's a gas leak." And he grabbed my hand. I turned towards him and realized he was me. And I knew I had become the nightmare. I screamed and he ran. It's been several days since then. I write this with what little autonomy I have left. I beg you to please search for me. Find me. Tell me what I must do. I feel the grasp upon my self-control beginning to wither. This persistent and overwhelming compulsion to find me, the me that isn't this wretch, is becoming all-consuming, and I don't think I can hold myself back for another day. I need to break this cycle. He needs to reach the candle. Don't Make Wishes When Your Speaker's Pumping Tunes, by Thomas Russell. Everyone knows that there are rules for making wishes. Birthday wishes don't work if you tell. Genies have a whole thing about romance and resurrection. The bigger half of the wishbone gets the fulfilled desire. Yada shmada. Even little kids get it. When it comes to making wishes, every method has, well, a method. That's why those monkey paw stories the Simpsons riffed on were so popular. The problem is, as me and my college housemate Jess found out, the reels for real wish-granting thingamies don't come on the box. I know this for a fact because the wish-granting Chinese finger trap that got us in this mess was delivered in one. If the matchbox the small tube of golden fabric arrived in had a label with instructions for use, I might not have been writing this from a bomb shelter. Yes, Jeremy, Todd, those cops, they'd probably all still be alive. But no such luck, right? Not for Chase Woods. She gets the wish-granting artifact that's all hidden consequences and unintended tragedy, doesn't she? God damn it, universe. Not even in an, oh, you were greedy, you deserved it way either. I'd love it if this was some ironic thing, you know. Like if I'd had some character flaw that got me in this mess and brought this all on myself. That's not what happened, though. Oh, God, nothing about this is fair. I didn't do anything that makes this some kind of twisted justice. Neither did Jess. If we'd known you were supposed to make the wishes out loud, none of this would have happened. All I wanted was a little good luck for my midterms. Didn't even think it would work, for Christ's sake. Okay, rewinding a bit. Last week we were drunk shopping on Etsy. Bit of retail therapy and tipsy giggling to break up study stress, you know. Jeremy, Jess's boyfriend, was tending bar. Todd was in his room doing, well, whatever it is Todd did in his room, smoking pot and playing Tekken, probably. That gave us the whole living room to ourselves. When Jess and I had the floor, things got a little silly, let's say. We'd made more than one unsober purchase that had all 4 residents of our rented ranch-style house on the edge of town confused. Jess was the one who ordered the finger trap, but we only knew that because the matchbox was in an envelope addressed to her, not me. There's no record of the purchase on her PayPal, though. We couldn't find the item listing on Etsy either, or even the seller when we tried to look them up after. It would be the darndest thing if this whole situation wasn't balls to the wall fucked in so many other ways, but neither of us could remember buying it or even viewing it. Okay, so our giggling may have been a little more than tipsy, but neither of us was hammered. We could recall most of the evening, even if some details were a little hazy. Both of us have a total blank when it comes to wish-granting Chinese finger traps, though. Todd reckons he overheard Jess ranting loudly about using something to become a princess like Meghan Markle, which could have been it. We must have ordered it, right? What other explanation is there? Well, wait. What am I saying? Todd's dead, Jess is dead, Jeremy is dead, and I'm holed up in some abandoned Cold War prepper bunker listening to the thud-thud-thud on the roof grow quieter. Nothing about this shit has an explanation. Chances are just as good that we never ordered that damned finger trap at all. We were probably picked randomly. Some cruel, fucking cosmic joke. Maybe Jess's family sent it. Maybe there's like some dark secret shit going on with her folks, and she died before we could find out. Fuck, maybe she knew. Maybe I was supposed to... No, that's stupid, Chase. Jess would have known to turn the speaker off if she was in on it. She wouldn't risk... Fuck, I can't even write it down. She wouldn't risk what happened to her. Risk that, just to set me up for some ritual or curse or something. Nobody would. Like I said, when the finger trap arrived, there were no instructions. It was in an envelope addressed to Jess Stamfy. No return address. Stamps a little faded and held on with transparent tape rather than the lick and stick adhesive on their underside. And props to the postman. How he deciphered that nearly illegible handwriting to figure our address, I don't know. Even if he delivered it at all, of course. Stamps and postal instructions could be a red herring. We don't have a doorbell cam, so yeah, if the finger trap was hand-delivered by some shady-ass individual instead of the usual post, I'd never know. Wouldn't surprise me, though. Jess damn near stepped on the envelope when she came through the front door after her Pilates class downtown. It was waiting for her on the doormat. Both Todd and I were in, but hadn't heard anything come through the mailbox. We were, Look, he was in my room, and he had to do a mad dash across the hall in his boxers before Jess turned a corner. Point is, I came to the living room and made a whole show of, oh yeah, I was just having a nap, so I just woke up. Jess didn't look up. She was sitting at the table, envelope already open, staring at the matchbox. What's that? I asked, taking a seat opposite her after grabbing an apple from the fruit bowl. It was on the mat, addressed to me. Don't recognize the handwriting, though, Jess replied, turning the matchbox between her fingers. She idly flicked it open. That's when we saw the damn finger trap. It was hard to miss, right? It was made of golden threads. Now, not golden threads like you get on parade uniforms or stage costumes, though. These threads glowed almost as if they were liquid metal that forgot it wasn't solid. The trap was about 6 inches long, and there was no art or anything on its surface aside from 2 lines of text. One was written in Chinese. I took a photo and looked at one of those pic-to-text apps. We didn't know what it meant, or think to even check. And of course we didn't. There were English words under the Chinese characters, so we just assumed it was a direct translation. The English text just said, "Make it so." Ah, a random Etsy purchase, I smirked. Jess shook her head. No, I don't think so, she said. I mean, maybe right. Can't think why I'd order a Chinese finger trap. I can. You love China. She grinned. I love ramen. It's not the same thing. I don't think ramen's even Chinese, is it? I shrugged. My mouth was dry and I suddenly was very thirsty as well. That's why I got up from the table and headed to the fridge. The mouth dryness wasn't because of the finger trap, before you get excited. It was because, well, Todd was in his room. Jess's Pilates class wasn't the only calorie-burning activity to happen that morning. The only reason I'm bringing my parchness up is because, en route to the refrigerator, I did what I always do. I turned on our Bluetooth speaker. With no input needed, the device connected to my phone, playing the last playlist on Spotify. I sputtered when the first sensual smooth saxophone-heavy track from my Todd Time mix started blaring into the kitchen, and I quickly shuffled across to my auto-curated, most played compilation. You know how I know that Jess and I were supposed to make the damn wishes out loud? The Weather Girl started playing. You know the jam, It's Raining Men. I tried to ignore Jess's cocked eyebrow after the speaker blunder exposed the very obviously intended for sexy time playlist I'd been listening to. So, that thing says "Make It So" on it, right? Reckon it's for you, granting wishes, like a genie. I'm pretty sure I turned a bright scarlet at her response. Why, Chase? You got someone in mind for that playlist? No, it's just, look, I just like jazz. Yeah, sure, Chase, sure. 13-year-old Jess went to every bar mitzvah, every cute boy at the temple because she loved hearing Alia. Jess was laughing when I sat back down next to her, and I picked up the brief glance she shot in the direction of Todd's room. Through the wall, we could hear the muted chugga-chugga-chugga of him losing his way through another game of Call of Duty. You know what? She must have known, mustn't she? For 6 months, the 3 of us lived together, and I'd never brought a guy back. Pretty sus. Todd hadn't brought a girl back either, but was, well, Todd's cute, but he wasn't exactly confident. I'd made at least 3 moves, let's put it that way. Humidity is rising. Barometer's getting low. According to all sources, the street's the place to go. Are we going to use this thing then? I glanced down to see Jess had slit one end of the finger trap on a slender digit. She was grinning ear to ear, probably still riding the serotonin high of all those burned calories at her Pilates class. I rolled my eyes, but stuck my index finger into the other end of the shimmering fabric. It couldn't hurt, right? I wish, Jess started saying, but I raised my finger to my lips. This is, in hindsight, the single dumbest thing I've ever done. Wishes don't work if you say them out loud, I cried, grinning too, totally unaware of how wrong and dangerous my naive presumptions were. True, Jess giggled. Okay, I'm going to count down from 3. When I do, think your wish real hard, and we'll pull out the trap. We were both giggling by this point, lost in a bit of the random silliness of it all. Again, study distractions were always jumped on, you know. How do you know it'll work? I asked. Well, I'll know if I wake up tomorrow with a DM from a recently divorced Prince Harry of England. You'll know it worked if you wake up next to... Okay, all right, I get your point. 'Cause tonight, for the first time, just about 10:30. 3. Jess began her countdown. I focused my mind, although not on Todd. I didn't need a wish for him, but I think Jess knew that, despite her teasing. She's pretty astute. As I said, all I wanted was a little good luck for my midterms. For the first time in history. 2. Jess had closed her eyes, and I'd shut mine too. I pictured myself sitting there in the exam hall, my tight chest subdued by the placebo confidence that comes with knowing you have some superstitious mumbo-jumbo looking out for you. I thought it was just my imagination at the time, but I felt the trap get warmer as the seconds counted down. Now I know better than to think the increase in temp was all in my head. It's gonna start raining, man. 1. I yelled the wish in my mind, my inner monologue as loud, clear, and directed as it ever had been. I wish, I shouted in my head, that I passed my exams. Then we pushed our fingers together. It's raining men, hallelujah. The living room rattled. There was a loud crack, like a bolt of lightning struck the building, so deafening that Jess and I fell from our chairs. It's one of the sounds so loud, you don't just hear it, you feel it, you know. The kind of volume where the tinnitus takes about a day to fade away after. We both shrieked in alarm, and from the floor I saw Todd barreling out of his room, face full of panic. Jesus fucking Christ, he yelled, running over to me. What the fuck was that? Chase, are you okay? The rest of the day was a write-off. Jess and I were, understandably, more than a little freaked out. Jeremy decided to swing by in the afternoon. I remember I was more than a little bitter about that. I kind of wanted Jess to go to his, so I could curl up next to Todd and listen to him waffle the stoner nonsense. The kind of rambling Chase Woods hated on paper, but found endearing and charming in real life, much to her intense annoyance, well, at first. I should have been just honest with Todd about us. The heart wants what the heart wants. If only I hadn't been so focused on appearances, on my stupid little white picket fence long-term suburbia goals, I'd take 1,000 happily ever afters supporting Todd's crazy business ideas, while we barely made ends meet, if you give me the choice now. By about 9 o'clock, we'd calmed down. Our investigation into the finger trap had come up empty, but after a day had passed, we felt confident enough to start putting the weirdness down to overreactive imaginations. Everything from earthquakes to a freak electrical fault was posited as an explanation for the bang. As for the finger trap itself, Jeremy decided we'd been too drunk to remember ordering it. Jess clung to that lie with everything she had, so the subject was dropped. The finger trap had vanished almost as soon as our fingertips connected, right when the whatever it was that damn near shook the house off its foundation struck. Looking back, I think Todd and Jeremy were just humoring us, trying to stop us from panicking, you know. I even started doubting myself. As much as I hate the silly women, the men are here now, you just got hysterical aspect of how that played out. Maybe it was just a folie à deux, a shared exam stress hallucination. As the evening wore on, things began to become a little more normal. We were playing cards against humanity when it started. It was 10:27 when Todd excused himself to use the bathroom, and that was the last time I ever saw him. We didn't hear anything from the bathroom. We were sat around the table watching Jeremy deal out the next hand while we waited for Todd to come back, when there was a dull thud just outside the front door. I remember looking at the clock in a who could be knocking at this hour way. 10:30 exactly, although I didn't quite get the significance yet. We shot each other confused looks, and Jeremy went to check outside the door. It was when we heard his high-pitched yells that Jess and I ran after. She screamed when she saw what waited on the porch. Well, I didn't. I bellowed, howled, shrieked, and wailed. I was terrified, but greater than my terror and confusion was despair. There, on the path leading from our front door to the sidewalk, was a body. Todd's body. I didn't believe it. I refused to. I couldn't. I ran back into the house, hammering on the bathroom door. It was still locked. Jeremy and Jess had to pull me away from it. I pounded my fists into it over and over, sobbing, my assault on the wood unrelenting even when my knuckles started to bleed. It's not Todd. It's not Todd. It's not Todd. The words rang in my ears, and it took me a few minutes to realize I was the one screeching them. When Jeremy kicked the door open, the bathroom was empty. Todd's cell phone was on the floor, screen cracked like he'd dropped it. A half-torn sheet of toilet paper lay next to it, and the seat was still up. Todd never left the seat up. It was one of the reasons Jess agreed to break her no-boys living arrangement stipulation. The side of the empty bathroom had me quarterbacking my way through Jeremy and Jess in the doorway. I sprinted back to the front of the house, collapsing to my knees when I ran out onto the porch to see the body was still there. Well, body's a stretch. Remains is probably more appropriate. I only knew it was Todd because he'd landed feet first, I think. His face, locked in a mix of confusion and fear, was relatively intact. Yes, an eyeball had been dislocated, and his snapped jaw hung limp, tongue lolling out of his swollen mouth. But that was a much better condition than the rest of him. Todd's legs weren't anywhere to be seen. His sneakers were. They'd both been thrown across the garden from the force of the impact, snapping his feet from his shins at the ankles. The rest of the limbs, from calf to thighs, had been completely obliterated. Todd's head, arms, and torso were at the center of a crater in the paving slabs, a red, gore-filled pit about half a foot deep, with the semi-liquid, eviscerated chunks of his legs pooling at the center. His organic slush was added to with every passing second by the innards leaking from his chest and belly. Todd's intestines, kidneys, liver, I could see all of them through a huge tear to the left of his belly button. The impact had severed his spinal cord, pushing the half attached to his pelvis through his front, the sharp bone lancing outward and piercing the flesh as though he were a retreating soldier in World War I who received a bayonet to the lower lumbar. I didn't know Todd had fallen, of course. I didn't really know anything. As you can imagine, I was in full-blown shock. I hadn't put any of the pieces together. I didn't even remember the song. It's only hindsight and having nothing to do in this damn bunker that's given me enough mental space to connect the dots. Jess and Jeremy were panicked too, of course, but without the added sense of profound loss, they had enough wherewithal to call the cops. Can't remember if Jeremy or Jess made the phone call. Doesn't really matter though, does it? Jeremy and Jess were both already long dead before any help arrived. Our student house is in a cul-de-sac. Now, Obviously the loud crunch of someone smacking into the paving slabs, not to mention the screaming that followed, had the neighbours coming to investigate. I remember looking up through tears and howling to see the concerned face of Mr. Borgman, the harmless old guy that lived across the street. Mr. B had walked across to our porch on his Zimmer. He didn't look scared. Maybe his time in Nam meant he wasn't fazed by the sight of Todd's body. The only expression on his soft old face was concern. He just about managed to get out a sentence when I looked up at him. "Good God, girl. What happened? You okay? Have you caught—" Then he vanished. There was no sound, no warning. The space in front of me that he'd occupied just emptied. 1 second there was Mr. Borgman bending down offering me his hand. And then there wasn't. I stopped wailing, so confused and shocked by the sight of a pensioner vanishing before my eyes that even my despair over Todd couldn't halt the barrage of WTFs flooding my train of thought. Then we heard a quiet whoosh of something heavy falling from the sky. Quiet at first, but louder with every passing second. We heard the screaming before long. Again, almost inaudible initially, but hauntingly clear within a few moments. It's like the unmistakable sound of someone pleading with the universe as they plummeted toward the ground. Mr. B landed on his Zimmer. The crunch as his spine connected with and buckled the steel walking frame cut through every other sound, from the howling wind to the distant sirens. I sat there for a few moments, blinking, my face covered in flecks of warm red moisture. That was the eye of the storm, I think. The last moments of calm before pandemonium fully broke loose. There was a family that lived next door to Mr. B, the Hasshausers. Now, Papa Hasshauser was part way through ushering his wife and 2 girls back in the house when he was taken. Everyone on the street looked up, and the panic started literally the second we spied Papa Hasshauser's flailing body about half a mile in the air. I've seen a lot of fucked up stuff today, but the faces of Mrs. Hasshauser and their daughters when Mr. Hasshauser disintegrated into red mist upon hitting the people carrier in the driveway is definitely a contender for the most PTSD generating. I sat there on the path for what felt like minutes, my mouth blubbing up and down like a fish, watching our quiet cul-de-sac erupt into blind terror. My ears started ringing, the screams and thuds and beep 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 of the Hasshauser's people carrier's alarm melting into a warbled, incomprehensible mess. Jess was holding Jeremy's hand when it was his turn. I only know that because she'd been leaning on him, and the sudden absence of his support made her fall over sideways. No, Jeremy, no, not you. Even though damn near every fiancé, mother, girlfriend, sister, wife, and daughter in the cul-de-sac was shouting at the top of their lungs, my ears honed in on Jess's trembling cries. I turned from the carnage to see her sprint into the house, coming back out with a sofa cushion under each arm. I know what she'd intended to do. Obviously, it was never going to work, but she wasn't thinking straight, was she? You know, when JFK got shot, the first thing his wife did was lean over to the back of the car to start scooping up the parts of his brain and skull. She was in shock. All her mind could think was, put John back together. I think that's what happened with Jess. Well, I was in shock too, which is why I couldn't stop her. All I could do was watch, paralyzed by my own emotional inertia. She positioned herself beneath where Jeremy tumbled. "Jess, wait, don't." Put the pieces together and found my voice eventually, but it was already way too late. She stood there, a cushion in each hand, and met my gaze. There was a wry smile on her lips, like a kid who'd found out they're the only one in class with 100% on the test. Then Jeremy landed. Jess never even had time to scream. The force of Jeremy's body colliding into her outstretched arms killed her instantly. Small blessing, I guess. Should have been instant for me, though. But no. God forbid Chase Woods stupidly witnessed the most traumatic shit like ever in real time. And my stupid-ass senses slowed right the fuck down when their faces connected. She'd been looking up, lifted her head just as his screaming one crashed into it. As inch after inch of Jeremy drove into Jess's skull with the force and velocity of a freight train, the cranial bones of both flattened, exploded horizontally outward like frickin' water balloons full of grey brain matter and blood-coated bone fragments. Their eyes were catapulted from their sockets, the optic cords of the lovers entwining mid-air before the impact made every one of the 4 detached balls pop. Jess and Jeremy compressed into each other, neither's body able to resist the other. Like a damn black hole was between them, sucking them both into the gore-filled crater in the sidewalk between 2 ruptured couch cushions. The only thing that remained of either were Jess's feet and shins, which still stood tall amidst the organic debris like, well, that day back in 2001 we all remember. The one preppers like the nutjob who built this bunker in the 80s claim they all saw coming. That comparison's kind of fucked her. Yeah, sorry. It's genuinely the first thing my brain thought, though once I'd blinked a couple of times and realized what had just happened. Well, shock, dude. It's a doozy. Shock's also the reason I noticed the glistening blood-soaked car keys on the ground. If I wasn't in shock, if I'd been thinking coherently, I'd have started to cry because my best friend, her partner, and my sort of secret housemate partner were all dead. Shock's what kept me alive, politically correct or not. I honestly only saw the keys because my mind was so calmly going, those keys there, one's covered in Jess and Jeremy's blood. They're kind of like a fire truck. I've never nearly died as often as I did on the drive from our house to the field where local boy Todd's secret smoking bunker was hidden. He'd taken me out there a couple of times, but never Jess or Jeremy, just me. I think that's when I first knew he liked me, you know. Said it was his safe place, where he always used to come as a kid to get high and think about stuff, figure out who he was before he found himself. I don't think he ever realized just how literal of a safe place these 4 cinder block walls would eventually become. If you're wondering why I haven't called the cops, it's because they were already on my trail when I arrived. A fair few of them, the man cops of course, were already dead. Gone the same way as Jeremy, Todd, Mr. B, Papa Hasshauser, and about a half dozen guys walking on the street or unfortunate enough to have been driving in the opposite direction. A couple of lady cops died too, only because the man cops behind the wheel got teleported half a mile in the air, mid-high-speed pursuit. Thank God I opted to live in a small town and drive in for lectures, yeah? Lord knows how high the fucking body count would be if I lived in the city. It wasn't until I got into the bunker and managed to stop screaming that I got calm enough to figure out what was happening. Yeah, I'm pretty smart, guys. Mentioned the midterms already, didn't I? If you think I'm majoring in creative writing or art history or some other cereal box subject, guess again. Astrophysics, mother lovers, with a minor in data science. That's why my thing with Todd is so it's got nothing to do with the F on his passport. It's because he's an idiot. Honestly, one of the dumbest guys I've ever met. Mr. Bean meets Homer Simpson level stupid. The only thing that enraged me more than his idiocy was how cute I found him, despite myself. Couldn't bring him to the gatherings at Professor Keensel's house. I'd be laughed out of there faster than Todd fell from the clouds. I should have done, though, shouldn't I? God damn it, Chase Woods. Well, I've been down here for a few hours. Plenty of time to emotionally unpack, backtrack, and realize where things went horribly, horribly wrong. I already knew the finger trap was all behind this. That was pretty freaking obvious. It had disappeared after Jess and I tried to make a wish. So had the instructionless matchbox, which meant the chances of this nightmare not being connected to that slither of shimmering gold fabric were slim to none. It took me a few minutes to realize where we'd fucked up. It was me. It was my fault. I was the one that told Jess to shush, to not speak her wish out loud. The finger trap had listened out for a command. Maybe 2 people aren't even supposed to use it, who knows? Apart from Jess's counting, the only words it could hear were those blasting out of my Bluetooth speaker. The lyrics to It's Raining Men. So this thing, whatever it was, had decided to interpret that as a command. Make it so. Granted the wish. Now all the men in our vicinity get transported into the sky. Well, the finger trap had been told that, as of 10:30 this evening, it would rain men. So it would be. Doesn't mean biological males either. And some of the Insta corpses I had to swerve dramatically to avoid were young. None were children. There were one or two little boys in the cul-de-sac, and thankfully I could still see them in the rear-view mirror as I drove away. The youngest victims of the finger trap's wish were just about teenagers. And that's the connection that led me to backtrack and remember the music I'd put on. A detail that made it all click. 13-year-olds were boys by my reckoning. But Jess was proudly Jewish. Boys are considered men in the eyes of God after their 13th birthday. That's the whole point of a bar mitzvah, right? Yes, there's a little more to it than that, but the golden finger trap must have been using loose definitions. Todd was another clue. If this was tied to biology, he would have been safe, but no. Sadly, the only box one needs to tick to fall victim to this whatever it is, this wish or curse or fucking freak anomaly of physics, is to have an identity that incorporates the broad sense concept of man. If you fit into the man category to somebody somewhere, you're fair game. I wish Jess was still alive. For the obvious reasons too, but the envelope was addressed to her. She's the missing piece of the puzzle. She Jacqueline Kennedy'd herself off the board. There has to be some meaning behind the finger trap showing up with her name on the package. Guess I'm never really going to find out, huh? Yeah, sadly, this is a goodbye, BT Dubs. I can't get out of this bunker, and the air pipe is clogged. There's just too many bodies piled on top of it. I already tried opening the hatch. I don't want to die in a fucking bunker. Duh, but I'm stuck. They stopped sending cops about an hour ago. I think they're sending feds now. Thud, thud, thud keeps getting softer as the men the finger trap curse takes have more bodies to land on. Oh, maybe they'll start surviving the fall if the pile gets big enough. I can faintly hear the warble of a female voice on a megaphone. It must be a spook. I don't reckon it would have taken too long for the CIA or some MIB equivalent we don't know about to show up. Hell, if they can make this stop, bring it on. I'll spend the rest of my life in a box if it means they can make it stop raining men. Jeez, I can't believe I typed that out in full. Unironic earnest. What is your life, Chase Woods? What is your life? I doubt this will make the news. Not to get all QAnon about it, but weird shit like this gets covered up all the time. You just know it does. They let us know about Area 51 because it's a good distraction from Area 52. They fessed up about MK Ultra and lied about its failure because it worked. We all know we're not getting given the full picture. I honestly don't care about that though. That was Todd's area of special interest until, well, you've just read about the day I had. I wish I'd listened a lot fucking more to him. Let's put it that way. Fuck. I'm starting to get lightheaded. I must be running out. You know what? I don't care. This is how I go, it's how I go. Can't exactly go back to normal after this, can I? I just drove through a small town and caused God knows how many deaths. It'll get written off as a terrorist attack. They'll say I had a rifle or something probably, won't they? I mean, I'm not exactly pale enough to play the mental breakdown sympathy card. That's if I even get offered prison. Might just shoot me here, save themselves the trouble. Let the spooks explain away the bodies falling from the sky as freak wind turbulence or some such bullshit. FML. Listen, I'm going to shut my eyes. Don't send help. Can't call cops. Cops are here, all dead. Not lady cops, just man cops. Send lady cops. I wanted to warn you. Don't make mistakes. Wish out loud when a weird finger trap shows up and turn off the music. Bad. FML. It's raining, man.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. Really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams. Bye-bye.